TRT is incredibly beneficial and is massively underrated for a lot of people. A lot of people would benefit from TRT, but they don't do it. Many doctors, many doctors, are not aware of TRT. They won't prescribe it. It either has a bad reputation, or they just don't know how to do it, or they do it the wrong way, wrong doses. They make people infertile that shouldn't become infertile, or yeah, just weird stuff. Like I've seen doctors prescribe Winstrol as TRT. Like, just I've seen lots of crazy shit. So, can I swear on your podcast? They yeah. So on one hand, I think there is a lot of need to make TRT better and more accessible and available. And I've had many individuals even consult with me, even though I'm not a medical doctor. People shouldn't be coming to me for these consultations, right? But because their own doctors are so poor at it, they come to someone who does have, or who they believe has better expertise and better. On the other hand, and I made a video on this after it came out about the same time as the whole podcast, where I said, and I also touched on the subject, which is the other side of the nature TRT, that a lot of influencers, in particular bodybuilders, are now using TRT as a euphemism for simply being on steroids, or being on a lower dose of steroids than they normally would. You know, like, oh, I'm on TRT now, meaning just a 500 gram testosterone,
right?
And which is cruising. You know, I'm not blasting at the moment, is what they're saying.
Right.
But it's not TRT. Like, actual TRT is testosterone replacement, apparently. Like the R, it just replaces your natural production. And I think that's what a lot of people don't get with true TRT. And I think you also said here, like at the end of your video, like if you look at people on actual TRT, you would never know.
Right. So yeah, a few points. I mean, one, just to jump back on like the point of a follow-up call, because some people, I'll see people debate online, and I think that's fine. I guess it has a place, but as I mentioned in the comments, I just find that generally very unproductive, right? There's certainly a different tonality to it. And also it's not really helping that many people other than the people conversing. I guess on Facebook, sometimes there's some engagement, but then you lose the post forever. And I just find most people, I've had the occasional interaction that it doesn't go this way, but most of the time when you can talk live with somebody, it's certainly better. I think
life lesson in general, I would say.
Right. Yeah. And you know, you see these kind of meme pictures posted, right, where it's like the bell curve of IQ, and it's like this like Neanderthal person thinking a certain way, and then there's kind of like the midwit level, and then there's kind of like the actual intelligent people, and they end up saying the same thing. And that's kind of, I could imagine one being made where it's like somebody who is maybe not so intelligent saying doctors don't know anything, and then you have the doctors who are clearly more intelligent and more informed than them, but then the really intelligent, informed people saying doctors don't know anything. And the problem is, so many people on this end think that they're on this end, and this is why you've got, I just saw this, I was going to make a post on it, but I just saw somebody who, they posted how it was like, you know, this vegan was such a terrible person, and they said, oh, baby was hospitalized because the mother was just feeding them like almond milk, right? And then it was some like carnivore person, and was like, this is so stupid, what an idiot, I just feed my baby beef all day. And like, and it was just like, okay, like, I mean, maybe that's better than just almond milk all day, but it was like, it's just two sides of, you know, it's just kind of ridiculous. So, and I see that with TRT as well. And unfortunately, it is true that while doctors on average are going to know a lot more than Gen Pop, I have very rarely come across a doctor who knows as much as somebody who is both intelligent and spending a lot of time reading about it, maybe such as yourself and other people in this space. But how does the average listener vet those two people out? It's very difficult.
Nope, for sure. I think that's in politics, in many conversations, that's such a huge issue, where there should be a name for this concept, where I call it, I sometimes in my friends, I call it like the free phase model or free step model, where step 1 and step 3 of knowledge are like the same. And in between, you have a lot of people that go crazy about the people that are on the right of the curve because they think they're on the left.
Right.
There should be like a name for this, because it's so often the case.
I mean, it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger. It's not exactly, but it's
partly, but it doesn't really explain like the 3 levels, and in particular 1 and 3 ending up at the same spot, because that's the source of the confusion. In any case, let's get into the meat of the arguments, because I think
Sure.
we have at least slightly different viewpoints on TRT and what the implications for bodybuilding.
Sure, sure. So to me, I think it's very tough to take the emotion out of this, right? Like we all want optimal muscle mass, we all want, sex drive, we all want these things. I think the biggest issue that we probably do agree on is what you said before about a lot of these bodybuilders who are on TRT and why it's so skewed, because it's skewed in two ways. Number one, the fact that, as you mentioned, people who are on, I would say, really, for the most part, anything above 150 milligrams. And again, there's obviously individual variation and you got to look at free tests and all these other things. But on average, I think it's very rare that most people are going to need more than 150 milligrams per week to truly replace, right? You get 200 plus, you're talking about like sports TRT and things like that. But then also, even what I think would be true TRT allows people who used to be very enhanced, it seems to be, if they're telling the truth, that there's a lot of anecdotes of people, right? A lot of anecdotes of people maintaining far more muscle mass because of years of blasting. And somebody who I do believe would be like John Meadows, who was, blasting for many years, and then 200 milligrams and then 100 milligrams. And again, all of these people could be lying, but it does seem to be people who I know who seem to be very honest people maintain on that. So that still skews it where it's like, well, they maybe are on a true TRT, but the average person is then, again, the knowledge base is skewed versus somebody who's never been on anything. They go on 80 to 100 milligrams of TRT. There almost seems to be this environment now online where people act like this is going to give some massive advantage. And that's clearly not correct either, based on the studies. It's not based on anecdote of people truly doing it. So I assume we agree with most of that there.
Yeah, that's actually my main point. Like if you get someone on TRT, and also the main thing is, what I think also people aren't getting with TRT is, it's not like somebody just goes on TRT. It's a medical issue. So you go on TRT when your doctor has determined that you have low, typically validated twice with blood work, testosterone levels. So in my experience, and probably in the whole podcast, this is how I should have discussed the topic, because it's nuanced and clearly very sensitive for a lot of people. The whole drug, everything with drug issues and natty is, very sensitive. So I should have just probably said what my experience is. And I've consulted with quite some clients. And for the record, I have clients on gear. I have clients that are natural. I would say, and especially these days, it's 95% natural. And I have clients that are on TRT, clients that go on T during the coaching. And this is mainly where my experience comes from. And if you look at people that go on TRT, actual TRT, like they need it, they have low testosterone level, they go on replacement to get normal physiological functioning. It's two categories. One, they're very old, as if they're really healthy. It's usually in their 60s, like or beyond, where they actually start needing it. If you're very healthy with your lifestyle, fit individual, lean, good diet, even in your 50s, it's not said that you need TRT yet. So it's mostly people 60 plus on one hand, or second population where it's usually idiopathic hypogonadism, and they're just screwed. Nobody knows why. In that population, I've actually never had a doctor identify the cause of the low testosterone levels. In some cases, because sex hormone binding globulin levels are very high. And for some reason, that seems to correct with exogenous testosterone, but not natural testosterone. And probably because you're deregulating the feedback mechanism and the fault lies in the feedback mechanism. In any case, it's people that have a medical issue, essentially. And that's also why I think it should be the case that these people should be able to compete, because they have a massive disadvantage. Like if you have people that are idiopathic, so basically genetic low T, they've had that most likely during adolescence, even probably prenatally. And we know that these are the periods that are even more important than your testosterone level later in life, because they identify your level of virilization. I think, for example, hand grip strength is a good indicator of sort of general overall fitness. You find that men and women have about the same hand grip strength until puberty, and then male hand grip strength skyrockets. And that is very strongly influenced by testosterone levels and the rise in testosterone levels.